championing the clean economy, corporate action, and protecting the freedom to invest. Please welcome Mindy Lubber, CEO, Ceres.
Great. Well, Sheldon Whitehouse, as usual, doesn't disappoint, a true force of nature in moving us in the direction we need to move in. Thank you for joining us here at the Nest. It is a beautiful place. It is part of what literally this year are over 1,000 events on climate change. Some of us may say, does this make any sense? 1,000 events, too many dinners, we know too much traffic running around the city like chickens with our heads cut off. But what I predict will come from all this activity, the discussions on policy, on technology, on risk and opportunity, on what the financial market should do about this. What will come out of this week, I believe, because of all of you, is the fact that acting on climate is unstoppable, that the private sector is in all the way, and while there's much to do, we are on our way. So thank you. We've got to keep the momentum going. There is no question 1,000 events are a lot, but the short message, the single, simple message is we are unstoppable in where we're going. I am Mindy Lubber, the president and CEO of Ceres, a nonprofit that for 35 years has worked to integrate sustainability into capital markets. We work with over 100 companies, over 200 investors, to make sure that we're looking at the risks and the opportunities, and they are integrated from the boardroom to the supply chain. When you think about climate change, nature loss, water scarcity, and pollution, they all pose incalculable risks to capital markets, as well as unlimited opportunities. In my short 5 minutes, I want to talk about those risks, the opportunities, and some of the headwinds that we're facing where we need all of you to join us in pushing back. So let's start with the risks. The risks have never been so clear. From water shortages to heat waves to insurance markets, we are seeing the multi-billion-dollar impacts of climate change each day. In the US, we've seen $182 billion in economic damages in 2024, have already seen $93 billion in 2025. The risk couldn't be more clear. And the opportunities as well could not be more clear. Globally, clean energy in the grid, investments are projected to reach $2.2 trillion in 2025, twice the amount expected to flow into fossil fuels. And over the past 5 years, clean energy investments have more than doubled. I could keep going on the opportunities. They are there, they are clear. We'll hear from Tony Davis, a brilliant investor, shortly on the opportunities. But that's what we're seeing. For capital markets, there's so much moving forward. But there's also now headwinds that we're going to talk about now in our next panel that's making it a little bit more difficult for private sector leaders to move. So first, let me talk about how the response is, and then I'll talk about those headwinds. We're seeing headwinds suggesting that acting on climate is a breach of fiduciary duty rather than a responsibility, that acting on climate is something corporations ought not to do, despite the fact they know acting on it is about value add. Those things do not make sense, and while they're slowing things down, we are still seeing encouraging signs that the private sector isn't slowing down. We're seeing huge sums of domestic and global investment in clean energy. Companies are overwhelmingly staying the course. They are setting goals and they are moving towards them. Yes, it is true. Some of them are not speaking out because of repercussions. Some of them are not as public in signing on to campaigns and what they're going to do. But our job together, and the data shows it as well, is that companies and investors understand the need to act on climate because of the financial risks and the opportunities. Think about this. Just this month, corporate support was crucial to securing an extension of California's nation-leading cap-and-trade program. It was the company voice and investor voice that pushed it over the line. These are financial issues. Businesses and investors know the truth that acting on climate is no longer about compliance or reputation management. It is about profit and resilience. It is about materiality and not just morality. It is about jobs and the economy and building a clean energy revolution. So we need to know there are pushbacks here in the United States particularly, but growing, where there are 135 bills to trying to suggest that asset owners can't consider climate risk. There are 9 bills in Congress just last week suggesting that shareholders should lose their right to file shareholder resolutions and engage with companies. We know we don't have to agree on everything, but we should agree about this. Investors' responsibility to prudently manage risk is not a political issue. This cannot be about politics. We are hosting today people from every side of the political spectrum. This is not about politics, to say it again. And we've got to make the case that this incursion into free market and telling markets what to do and how to do it makes no sense, and that the risks and the opportunities are what make sense. So I'm going to close by saying, yes, we live in interesting times. The private sector is moving forward, operating with risk and opportunity in mind. And we're here to showcase the opportunities, the success stories, but the need to work together to take this out of the political demand, to show that acting in climate is a clear guide for our future economy. Thank you so much. Great to have you here, appreciate it. And I'm now going to introduce Tony Davis. Tony Davis runs Inherent Capital, an investment firm that looks at opportunities and risks. But Tony is also the co-chair of Ceres. And what I think about Tony is the eternal optimist, somebody who is out there looking at opportunities for investment, finding them, and keeping hope alive, showing us what we can do with smart investments as we move forward. Thank you so much for having me and for joining us. And now let me invite Tony onto the stage. You know, in every event I've been at, the chairs get more complicated, difficult, so I will remember next time to wear pants. Anyway, good to be here. The thing I said about Tony, and then I'm going to quickly turn this over to him, is that his optimism knows no bounds. He's not missing the problems, but he is out there finding the solutions that we're all eager to find. Our work with some of the largest public pension funds, where they're making $100 billion commitments to a clean energy future, to the smaller investors, venture investors, investors in every asset class, are looking for the opportunities, and it's those opportunities that will move us forward. Tony, what's going on out there, and what gives you so much optimism?
Well, thanks. First, it's great to be here. You know, there are a few things. I mean, no doubt it is a challenging moment. And we'd like to see better policies from this administration. But I think the biggest news today that we're observing is the increase in energy demand related to new technologies, and in particular to artificial intelligence and data center growth. And in that context, what we're seeing last year is 90% plus of all new generation additions were renewables. And why is that? It's actually not because they're green. It's because it's better technology. They're cheaper, and they also provide energy security. Your counterparty is the sun, instead of your counterparty being a country that could choose to weaponize its fossil fuel exports. So we think that trend will continue, and that we'll continue to see renewables and take the lion's share of energy generation growth going forward. There are other areas that we're excited about where we're investing today. One is energy efficiency, and at the same time as we're seeing demand increase, we're seeing the price of electricity increase. It's making energy efficiency investments even more compelling than they were 2 years ago. And by that, I mean we're really attacking the demand side of the equation. So think demand response programs, think the built environment, old technologies like insulation and better windows, new technologies like smart building management systems, smart metering, heat recovery and use in industrial processes, cogen. There's a relative lack of capital formation in the energy efficiency space, which typically leads to better kind of risk return opportunities. and they're not as easy, these opportunities are not as easy to scale and rinse and repeat as renewables, but we find it very, very compelling. The other real benefit of investing in efficiency is, as you probably know, some 2/3 of primary energy is lost in the conversion to its end use. So if you can deal with the demand problem directly, it has really an outsized impact on emissions. So we are finding a lot of really interesting places to invest at the moment. Natural capital is another area where it's an industry that's somewhat out of favor at the moment. It's the cheapest way that we know of to remove carbon from the atmosphere. We can develop very high quality afforestation and reforestation projects and remove carbon at $20 to $30 per ton. And as we heard from the senator recently, we think there's a real chance that carbon gets priced in a meaningful way in the not too distant future. And if you believe IPCC's estimates, that needs to be at $100 to $200 per ton to really affect meaningful change in our carbon consumption behavior. So if you can build it at $20 to $30 per ton and sell it at 100 plus, those are great investments, and it's the ultimate triple bottom line because it also really benefits local communities and it benefits nature and biodiversity. So we're excited about that space as well.
There are enough investments to go around. As more and more large institutional investors make commitments, small investors, is the timing right for making these investments? Are there enough out there? What are you seeing?
I think the timing is right. I mean, I think the march towards decarbonization is inexorable because I think the economics are better, and I also think that the effects of climate change are just becoming more and more evident, regardless of the rhetoric that we hear. One doesn't have to believe in science anymore to believe in climate change. We just have to read the news or open our windows or talk to a farmer. And I think that the cost of climate change, so the wildfires in California, floods in Texas, hurricanes in Florida, the cost will make it such that combating climate change isn't a political decision, it's just an economic reality, in my opinion. So I think now is a good time. I think investors and corporates have to think long-term. It's not about, we don't think in terms of what's gonna happen during this administration. We think about what's gonna happen over multiple years and trying to discount those cash flows and those scenarios back to today.
You mentioned a minute ago, and I know you're not here as a political person, but something that makes extraordinary economic sense in the markets, and that is pricing carbon. What are you seeing around the world? Is there any chance we might be able to keep that concept alive and growing and moving forward here in the United States?
I'm optimistic just for a couple reasons. I mean, one, I think it just will become increasingly clear what the externality and the cost of carbon emissions is. We're also seeing, and maybe I'll mention the great work that Ceres has just done in California around the extension of the Cap and Invest program. Once these programs get into place, the revenues that they generate are meaningful. And so we're seeing other jurisdictions, again, as the senator alluded to, around the world that are now considering advancing these kinds of programs. They generate meaningful revenues. And oh, by the way, if you're not pricing your carbon and you're shipping goods or services to their jurisdictions, they're going to charge you for that. And so I think that will make every sort of jurisdiction want to have a price on carbon so that they can keep those revenues at home. So this, I think most economists would agree it's one of the most important things that we can do to allow the market to sort of properly price these externalities and to move forward with really thoughtful investment. I'm hopeful. As you say, I am sometimes a bit of an optimist.
A good thing indeed. At every event that I've been at, probably many of you have been hearing about AI nonstop. We hear about AI as it relates to content, materials, and so on. But we know that AI also is a great user of energy and of water. Ceres just released a report this week on the amount of water needed for AI to keep it going, and a problem we need to look at, act on, and address. But there seems to be an insatiable need for more energy. Can we meet that demand? Can we meet that need? How do we go about the fact that demand is growing, and we've got to make sure that everybody could afford and have access to energy.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, the competition in AI, to a certain extent, it's about models and chips, but it's also a competition around energy. And China added 430 gigawatts of renewable power last year. I mean, just a shocking number. So the estimate is that they've spent $10 to $15 billion on fusion research in the last few years alone. So I'm optimistic because of renewables. We also see emerging baseload technologies that are approaching commercialization. So think enhanced geothermal, which is a baseload energy source. Think fusion, which we've been talking about now for years, but in some ways, because of AI or with enhanced compute and enhanced material science, we think fusion will become a commercial reality in the next 5 to 10 years. So these are emission-free baseload technologies, which is what you really need. And I'm sure you know some of the pushback that you get against renewables. So and the opportunity there, I think, from an investment standpoint, is both to own the equity in these new technologies, but also there's a huge credit and debt financing opportunity. And so the infrastructure level financing that will be needed, and you hear folks refer to first of a kind, but the investors that are willing to lean in and take some of that risk in these first of a kind financings, I think will earn outsized risk return. And many of those technologies will be substantially de-risked by the time they get to final investment decision.
The eternal optimist. There is no question we are seeing great things in the private sector despite pushback, despite headwinds, despite blowback. The risk is real. Investors are acting. Companies are integrating sustainability, climate risk, water risk into all that they do. As the attacks politically come, I think it's up to all of us to stand up, to speak out, to eventually call for things like a price on carbon. Might not happen in the United States in the next 2 weeks, but around the world, the momentum is extraordinary. I just came from Singapore. I've been in Europe recently. This is full speed ahead because this is about building a better and greater economy. Thanks so much to all that you're doing to help us get there. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.